The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Windsor Castle as Queen Camilla made her way through the ancient corridors. Her heels clicked softly against the polished stone floors, echoing in the vast hallways that had witnessed centuries of royal history. Today felt different somehow, though she couldn't quite place why. Perhaps it was the unseasonable chill in the air, or the way the staff seemed to move with unusual urgency. Detective Inspector James Morrison had been with the Royal Protection Unit for 12 years, but he had never experienced anything quite like what was about to unfold. Standing at his post near the king's private study, he noticed the subtle changes in routine that others might miss. The way Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, the king's personal physician, had arrived earlier than usual. The hushed conversations between senior staff members. The slight tremor in Queen Camilla's voice when she greeted him that morning. King Charles had been feeling unwell for several days, though he had insisted on maintaining his royal duties. His complexion had grown increasingly pale, and those closest to him noticed how he would sometimes pause mid-sentence, as if gathering strength. The king, ever dedicated to his responsibilities, had dismissed concerns about his health, attributing his fatigue to the demanding schedule of royal engagements. Camilla knew her husband better than anyone. She had watched him push through countless challenges, always placing duty before personal comfort. But, this morning, something in his eyes alarmed her. There was a vulnerability there that she had rarely seen, even during their most private moments. When she had suggested he rest, he had simply smiled and squeezed her hand, saying he had too many people depending on him to slow down now. The royal household operated like a well-oiled machine, with each member of staff playing their crucial role in maintaining the dignity and efficiency of the monarchy. Mrs. Margaret Thompson, the head housekeeper, had served 3 generations of royals and had developed an almost supernatural ability to sense when something was amiss. As she arranged fresh flowers in the Queen's sitting room, she noticed how Camilla's usual warmth seemed strained, as if she were carrying a burden too heavy to share. Dr. Hartwell had been monitoring the king's condition discreetly, conducting brief examinations under the guise of routine checkups. What she discovered during these sessions concerned her greatly. The king's blood pressure had been fluctuating dangerously, and there were signs of stress on his cardiovascular system that couldn't be ignored much longer. However, convincing a monarch to prioritize his health over his duties was proving to be an impossible task. The morning progressed with its usual royal routine. King Charles attended a brief meeting with his private secretary about upcoming engagements, reviewed correspondence from government officials, and prepared for a scheduled video call with Commonwealth leaders. To any observer, he appeared to be functioning normally, though those who knew him well could see the effort it required. Queen Camilla tried to focus on her own responsibilities, but found herself constantly worried about Charles. She had rearranged her schedule to remain closer to him throughout the day, though she was careful not to make her concern too obvious. The last thing she wanted was to add to his stress by appearing anxious about his condition. Detective Inspector Morrison continued his vigilant watch, his trained eye catching details that others might overlook. He noticed how the king moved slightly slower than usual, how he seemed to pause longer between activities. Morrison had received specialized training in recognizing medical emergencies, and his instincts were telling him to remain especially alert today. The castle's ancient walls seemed to hold their breath as the morning unfolded. Servants went about their duties with quiet efficiency, but there was an underlying tension that permeated the atmosphere. Even the normally cheerful chatter in the servants' quarters was subdued, as if everyone sensed that something significant was about to happen. As the clock approached noon, King Charles was in his private study, reviewing documents for an afternoon engagement. The room, filled with priceless artifacts and family photographs, had always been his sanctuary. Here, surrounded by reminders of his heritage and responsibilities, he felt most connected to his role as monarch. But, today, the weight of that responsibility seemed almost overwhelming. Queen Camilla knocked gently on the study door before entering. She found Charles standing by the window, looking out at the gardens where they had walked together countless times. There was something about his posture that immediately alarmed her. He seemed to be leaning against the window frame for support, and his breathing appeared labored. When he turned to greet her, Camilla saw something that made her heart skip a beat. Charles's face had taken on an alarming pallor, and there was a sheen of perspiration on his forehead despite the cool temperature of the room. His eyes, usually so sharp and alert, seemed slightly unfocused. "Charles, are you feeling all right?" she asked, moving quickly to his side. He attempted his usual reassuring smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just a bit tired, my dear. Nothing that can't wait until after this afternoon's engagement." But Camilla knew better. In all their years together, she had learned to read the subtle signs that Charles tried so hard to hide. The slight tremor in his hands as he reached for his papers. The way he sat down more carefully than usual. The barely perceptible shortness of breath. "Charles, I think you should rest," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "The engagement can be rescheduled." "Nonsense," he replied, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "I've made commitments. People are counting on me." It was then that Camilla noticed something that truly frightened her. As Charles stood up from his desk, he swayed slightly, reaching out to steady himself against the chair. The color drained from his face even more, and, for a moment, she thought he might collapse right there in front of her. Detective Inspector Morrison, positioned just outside the study, heard the change in voices from within. His training had taught him to be sensitive to alterations in normal patterns, and something about the conversation he was hearing triggered his alert status. He moved closer to the door, ready to respond if needed. Inside the study, Queen Camilla gently guided her husband back to his chair. "Charles, please, let me call Dr. Hartwell." The king's pride warred with his body's obvious distress. He had spent his entire life in service to others, putting duty before personal needs. The idea of causing concern or disrupting schedules because of his own discomfort went against every instinct he had developed over decades of royal service. But, as he looked into Camilla's worried eyes, he saw something that made him reconsider. It wasn't just concern for his physical well-being, it was the deep, profound love of a woman who had stood by him through every challenge they had faced together. Her fear was real, and perhaps it was time to acknowledge that his condition might be more serious than he wanted to admit. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "a brief rest might be wise." Camilla immediately reached for the discreet communication device that connected her to the royal medical team. Her hands trembled slightly as she made the call, trying to keep her voice steady. "Dr. Hartwell, could you please come to the king's study? It's rather urgent." The response was immediate. Dr. Hartwell, who had been standing by in the medical wing, gathered her equipment and hurried toward the royal quarters. Her medical bag contained everything necessary for emergency treatment, and her mind raced through possible scenarios as she made her way through the corridors. Detective Inspector Morrison heard the urgency in the Queen's voice and immediately activated the emergency protocols. Without causing alarm among the general staff, he discreetly positioned additional security personnel and ensured that emergency medical services were on standby. His years of experience had taught him that preparation was everything in crisis situations. As Dr. Hartwell arrived at the study, she was met by Queen Camilla's anxious face. "He's been feeling unwell for days," Camilla explained quickly. "But, just now, he seemed to become much worse. He was dizzy, pale, and I'm worried about his breathing." Dr. Hartwell entered the study to find King Charles sitting in his leather chair, looking far more fragile than she had ever seen him. His usually commanding presence seemed diminished, and the signs of distress were clearly visible to her trained eye. "Your Majesty, Dr. Hartwell said professionally, I'd like to conduct a quick examination, if I may." As she approached with her medical equipment, King Charles managed a weak smile. "I'm afraid I may have been rather stubborn about my health lately, Doctor." The examination that followed would reveal the true severity of the situation and set in motion a series of events that would test not only the royal family's strength but also the dedication of those sworn to protect them. What Dr. Hartwell discovered in those crucial first moments would prove that sometimes, even kings must acknowledge their human limitations. The afternoon sun continued to stream through the study windows, casting everything in a golden glow that seemed almost surreal given the gravity of the situation unfolding within those historic walls. Outside, life at Windsor Castle continued its normal pace, unaware that inside the king's private sanctuary, a medical crisis was beginning to unfold that would challenge everyone involved in ways they had never imagined. Detective Inspector Morrison remained at his post, his senses heightened and his training taking over. He knew that whatever was happening in that room had the potential to change everything, and his job was to ensure that the royal family remained safe and secure, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell's hands moved with practiced precision as she checked King Charles's vital signs. What she discovered sent a chill through her professional composure. His pulse was rapid and irregular, his blood pressure had dropped to dangerous levels, and his skin had taken on a concerning grayish pallor that indicated poor circulation. These were not the symptoms of simple fatigue or stress, they pointed to something far more serious. Queen Camilla stood nearby, her hands clasped tightly together as she watched the examination unfold. Years of royal training had taught her to maintain composure in public, but, in the privacy of this moment, her worry was clearly visible. She could see the concern growing in Dr. Hartwell's expression, and it confirmed her worst fears about her husband's condition. "Your Majesty," Dr. Hartwell said carefully, "I believe we need to move you to the medical wing immediately. Your symptoms suggest a cardiovascular event that requires immediate attention." King Charles attempted to protest, but his words came out weaker than intended. "Surely it's just exhaustion. I have the Commonwealth leaders call in 30 minutes, and this evening's reception cannot be cancelled." Detective Inspector Morrison, monitoring the situation from his position, could hear the urgency in Dr. Hartwell's voice through the partially open door. He immediately activated silent emergency protocols, ensuring that an ambulance was discreetly positioned nearby and that the castle's medical facilities were prepared for immediate use. His training had prepared him for many scenarios, but a medical emergency involving the monarch presented unique challenges that required split-second decision-making. Dr. Hartwell's examination revealed alarming irregularities in the king's heartbeat. Through her stethoscope, she could hear the telltale signs of cardiac distress, missed beats, racing rhythms, and the concerning sound of a heart struggling to maintain normal function. Her years of experience treating high-profile patients had taught her to remain calm in crisis situations, but the severity of what she was observing tested even her professional composure. "Ma'am," Dr. Hartwell turned to Queen Camilla, "I need to be direct with you. The king is experiencing what appears to be a serious cardiac episode. His heart rhythm is extremely irregular, and his blood pressure indicates that his cardiovascular system is under severe stress. We need to act immediately." The words hit Camilla like a physical blow. Throughout their years together, she had always been Charles's strength, the one person who could ground him when the pressures of royal life became overwhelming. Now, faced with the possibility of losing him, she felt a terror unlike anything she had ever experienced. King Charles, despite his weakened state, continued to focus on his responsibilities. The reception tonight honors wounded veterans. They've been planning this for months. Surely we can manage this after. His words were cut short as a sharp pain shot through his chest. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a crushing pressure that seemed to squeeze the breath from his lungs. His hand instinctively moved to his chest as his face contorted with discomfort. Dr. Hartwell immediately recognized the signs of acute cardiac distress. "Your Majesty, we need to move now." "Ma'am," she addressed Camilla, "please help me get him to the medical wing." Detective Inspector Morrison burst through the study doors, having heard the urgency in their voices. His training kicked in immediately as he assessed the situation. "Doctor, what do you need?" "We need to get the king to the medical facilities immediately. Can you arrange for a wheelchair and ensure the corridors are clear?" Morrison was already speaking into his radio, coordinating with his team to create a secure path to the medical wing. "Alpha Team, clear route to medical. Code Red protocols. Maintain discretion." As they prepared to move the king, Camilla found herself fighting back tears. The man who had always been her rock, who had faced every challenge with unwavering dignity, now looked frighteningly vulnerable. She took his hand, feeling how cold and clammy it had become. "Charles, stay with me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The journey to the medical wing felt endless, though it took only minutes. The castle's staff, alerted by Morrison's team, had discreetly cleared the corridors, ensuring privacy during this critical moment. As they moved through the ancient hallways, Camilla couldn't help but think about all the history these walls had witnessed: births, deaths, crises, and celebrations spanning centuries. Now they were witnessing another pivotal moment in royal history. Dr. Hartwell had called ahead to prepare the medical facility's advanced cardiac equipment. The castle's medical wing, though small, was equipped with state-of-the-art technology specifically designed to handle emergency situations. As they arrived, a team of specialized nurses was already waiting with monitoring equipment and emergency medications. King Charles was quickly connected to cardiac monitors, and the rhythmic beeping that filled the room told a concerning story. His heart rate was dangerously erratic, swinging between rapid periods and alarming pauses. The electronic display showed patterns that confirmed Dr. Hartwell's fears. This was a serious cardiac emergency that could rapidly become life-threatening. "Ma'am," Dr. Hartwell addressed Camilla while simultaneously working to stabilize the king's condition, "I need to contact the cardiac specialists at St. Bartholomew's Hospital. Your husband's condition is beyond what we can manage here at the castle." The reality of the situation began to sink in for everyone present. This was not something that could be handled quietly within the royal household. External medical intervention would be necessary, which meant that news of the king's condition could potentially become public knowledge. Detective Inspector Morrison understood the implications immediately. A royal medical emergency required coordination with multiple security agencies, hospital administrators, and government officials. He began making the necessary calls while ensuring that information was shared only with those who absolutely needed to know. Queen Camilla sat beside her husband's bedside, holding his hand as medical equipment monitored his every heartbeat. Charles's eyes were closed, but she could see the tension in his face as he fought against the pain. Occasionally, he would squeeze her hand, as if drawing strength from her presence. "The ambulance team from St. Bartholomew's is en route," Dr. Hartwell reported. "They're bringing specialized cardiac equipment and will be accompanied by Dr. Michael Singh, one of London's leading cardiologists." As they waited for the medical team to arrive, King Charles experienced another severe episode. The monitors began alarming as his heart rate spiked dangerously high before suddenly dropping to concerning levels. His breathing became labored, and his skin took on an even more alarming pallor. Dr. Hartwell immediately administered emergency medications to help stabilize his heart rhythm while preparing for the possibility of more aggressive intervention. Her hands moved quickly but steadily, drawing on years of training and experience to manage a situation that was rapidly becoming critical. Camilla watched in horror as her husband's condition deteriorated before her eyes. The strong, dignified man she had married seemed to be slipping away, despite the best efforts of the medical team. She found herself praying silently, asking for strength and for Charles to pull through this crisis. Detective Inspector Morrison continued coordinating security arrangements while monitoring the medical situation. His team had established a secure perimeter around the medical wing and were prepared to escort the ambulance team directly to the king's location upon their arrival. The sound of approaching sirens could be heard in the distance, growing louder as the emergency medical team made their way to Windsor Castle. For Camilla, those sirens represented both hope and fear: hope that advanced medical intervention could save her husband, and fear that his condition was so serious that such dramatic measures were necessary. Dr. Singh arrived with his team carrying specialized cardiac equipment that could provide more advanced monitoring and treatment options. His reputation as one of Britain's most skilled cardiologists provided some comfort, though his serious expression upon examining the king's condition confirmed the gravity of the situation. "We need to get him to the cardiac unit immediately," Dr. Singh announced after his initial assessment. "He's experiencing severe cardiac arrhythmia that could lead to complete heart failure if not treated aggressively." The medical team worked with practiced efficiency to prepare King Charles for transport. As they transferred him to the specialized stretcher, Camilla felt as though she was watching her world crumble. The man who had always been her anchor was now completely dependent on the skill and dedication of others for his very survival. Detective Inspector Morrison's team had created a secure corridor for the ambulance transport, ensuring that the king's medical emergency remained private while he received the urgent care he desperately needed. As they prepared to leave Windsor Castle, everyone involved understood that the next few hours would be critical not only for the king's survival but for the future of the monarchy itself. The ambulance doors closed with a finality that seemed to echo through the castle corridors, carrying away not just a patient but a king whose life hung in the balance. The ambulance raced through the streets of London with its precious cargo, every second counting as King Charles's condition remained critically unstable. Queen Camilla sat beside the stretcher, her hand never leaving her husband's, while Dr. Singh and his medical team worked frantically to maintain his vital signs during the journey to St. Bartholomew's Hospital. Detective Inspector Morrison followed in a separate security vehicle, coordinating with his colleagues to ensure that their route to the hospital remained secure and that the medical team would have immediate access to the cardiac unit upon arrival. His radio crackled constantly with updates from various security teams positioned throughout London. Inside the ambulance, the sophisticated monitoring equipment painted a terrifying picture of the king's condition. His heart rhythm continued to fluctuate wildly, creating dangerous patterns that threatened to spiral into complete cardiac arrest. Dr. Singh administered additional medications while constantly monitoring the delicate balance between stabilizing the king's heart and avoiding dangerous side effects. "How much longer?" Camilla asked, her voice tight with anxiety as she watched her husband's face, which had become frighteningly pale despite the oxygen mask helping him breathe. 8 minutes, Dr. Singh replied without taking his eyes off the monitors. "The cardiac unit is prepared for immediate intervention. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the head of cardiac surgery, will be waiting for us." King Charles drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally opening his eyes to find Camilla's worried face above him. During his moments of awareness, he tried to communicate, but the oxygen mask and his weakened condition made speech nearly impossible. His eyes, however, conveyed volumes, love, concern for his family, and the lifelong sense of duty that had defined his reign. At St. Bartholomew's Hospital, Dr. Rebecca Martinez had assembled her finest cardiac team. News of the royal emergency had spread through the hospital's senior staff, and everyone understood the gravity of both the medical situation and its potential impact on the nation. The cardiac unit had been cleared of other patients, and the most advanced equipment had been prepared for immediate use. As the ambulance approached the hospital, Detective Inspector Morrison's security team had established a discreet perimeter that would allow for the king's private arrival while maintaining the highest levels of protection. Media outlets remained unaware of the crisis unfolding, though Morrison knew that such secrecy could not be maintained indefinitely. The transfer from ambulance to hospital was executed with military precision. King Charles was wheeled directly into the cardiac unit, where Dr. Martinez immediately took charge of his care. Her first examination confirmed everyone's worst fears: the king was experiencing a complex cardiac episode that required immediate surgical intervention. "Your Majesty," Dr. Martinez addressed Camilla with professional compassion, "your husband's condition is extremely serious. He's experiencing severe cardiac arrhythmia complicated by coronary artery blockages. We need to perform emergency cardiac catheterization immediately, and there's a significant possibility that surgical intervention will be required." The medical terminology felt like a foreign language to Camilla, but the gravity in Dr. Martinez's voice was unmistakable. "What are his chances?" she asked, dreading the answer. "With immediate intervention, we have reasons to be optimistic," Dr. Martinez replied carefully. "However, I must be honest with you, the next few hours will be critical, and there are significant risks involved with both the procedure and his current condition." As the medical team prepared King Charles for emergency cardiac catheterization, Camilla found herself in the unique position of having to make critical decisions about his care while he was unable to advocate for himself. The weight of responsibility felt overwhelming, knowing that her choices could affect not only her husband's life but, potentially, the future of the monarchy. Detective Inspector Morrison had established a secure command center within the hospital, maintaining communication with senior government officials who needed to be informed of the king's condition. The constitutional implications of a monarch's medical crisis required careful coordination with multiple agencies and officials. In the cardiac catheterization laboratory, Dr. Martinez and her team worked with incredible precision. The procedure involved threading tiny cameras through the king's blood vessels to identify the exact location and severity of the blockages affecting his heart. What they discovered was more serious than initially expected: multiple arteries showed significant narrowing, explaining the severity of his cardiac symptoms. "We're going to need to place several stents immediately," Dr. Martinez announced to her team. "His left anterior descending artery is 90% blocked, and there are significant restrictions in 2 other major vessels." Queen Camilla waited in a private family area adjacent to the cardiac unit, pacing nervously while receiving periodic updates from the medical team. Each minute felt like an hour as she contemplated the possibility of losing the man who had been her partner through every challenge they had faced together. Dr. Singh remained with Camilla during the procedure, explaining what the medical team was doing and helping her understand the complex process of cardiac intervention. His calm, professional demeanor provided some comfort during what was undoubtedly the most frightening experience of her life. "The catheterization is progressing well," he reported after receiving an update from the surgical team. "They've successfully identified the blockages and are now working to restore proper blood flow to his heart muscle." As the hours passed, Detective Inspector Morrison coordinated with government officials to prepare for various scenarios. If the king's condition worsened, there would be constitutional procedures that needed to be activated. If he recovered, there would be questions about his ability to continue his royal duties and the potential need for a period of regency. Inside the catheterization laboratory, Dr. Martinez encountered complications that tested her considerable skill. One of the king's coronary arteries proved more damaged than the initial imaging had suggested, requiring a more complex intervention than originally planned. The delicate work of placing stents to reopen the blocked vessels demanded absolute precision. "Blood pressure is stabilizing," one of the surgical nurses reported, providing the first genuinely positive news of the day. "Heart rhythm is showing improvement," added another team member, monitoring the king's cardiac function in real time. For Queen Camilla, these brief updates from Dr. Singh provided precious hope that her husband might survive this ordeal. She found herself remembering their years together, the quiet moments away from public scrutiny, the shared laughter during difficult times, and the deep partnership that had sustained them both through the challenges of royal life. As the procedure entered its fourth hour, Dr. Martinez made the critical decision to place a third stent in the king's most severely blocked artery. This intervention carried additional risks but offered the best chance for complete restoration of cardiac function. Her hands moved with the precision that had made her one of Britain's most respected cardiac surgeons. "Stent placement successful," she announced to her team. Blood flow is being restored to the affected areas. The monitors began showing more encouraging patterns as King Charles's heart responded to the intervention. His blood pressure stabilized at healthier levels, and the dangerous arrhythmias that had threatened his life began to subside. For the first time since the crisis began, there were genuine reasons for optimism. Detective Inspector Morrison received word that the procedure was progressing successfully and immediately updated his security teams and the government officials who were standing by for news. The relief in his voice was evident as he passed along the first positive reports of the day. When Dr. Martinez finally emerged from the catheterization laboratory, her expression carried cautious optimism. Queen Camilla immediately stood, searching the surgeon's face for any indication of her husband's condition. "The procedure went well," Dr. Martinez reported. "We successfully placed 3 stents and restored proper blood flow to your husband's heart. His vital signs are stabilizing, and he's responding well to the intervention." Camilla felt her knees weaken with relief, and Dr. Singh steadied her as the overwhelming stress of the day finally caught up with her. "Can I see him?" she asked. "He's being moved to the cardiac intensive care unit now. He'll be unconscious for several more hours while his body recovers from the procedure, but you can certainly be with him." As King Charles was wheeled into the intensive care unit, surrounded by monitors and medical equipment that would track his every heartbeat, Queen Camilla took her place beside his bed. The man who had always been her strength now depended on her steady presence as he fought to recover from the most serious medical crisis of his life. Detective Inspector Morrison established security protocols for the intensive care unit while maintaining the discretion that had kept this crisis from becoming public knowledge. His team would remain vigilant throughout the king's recovery, understanding that the next phase of this ordeal would bring its own unique challenges and risks. The cardiac intensive care unit at St. Bartholomew's Hospital became a fortress of hope and determination as King Charles fought for his life in the critical hours following his emergency cardiac intervention. Queen Camilla maintained a constant vigil beside his bed, her hand resting gently on his arm while sophisticated monitoring equipment tracked every aspect of his recovery. Dr. Rebecca Martinez checked on her royal patient every hour, carefully monitoring his response to the stent placement procedure. The initial signs were encouraging. His heart rhythm had stabilized significantly, and his blood pressure was maintaining healthy levels for the first time since the crisis began. However, she knew that the next 24 hours would be crucial in determining his long-term prognosis. Detective Inspector Morrison had transformed a nearby conference room into a secure command center, where he coordinated with multiple agencies while maintaining absolute secrecy about the king's condition. Government officials were informed on a need-to-know basis, and contingency plans were quietly prepared for various scenarios that might unfold based on the king's recovery progress. As the evening hours passed, King Charles began showing subtle signs of improvement. His color gradually returned to normal, and his breathing became less labored with the assistance of the oxygen supplementation. The dangerous cardiac rhythms that had threatened his life had given way to more stable patterns that indicated his heart was beginning to function properly again. Queen Camilla had not left his bedside since arriving at the hospital. She refused offers of food and rest, instead choosing to maintain her vigil over the man who had been her constant companion through every challenge they had faced together. Her presence seemed to provide a calming influence that the medical staff believed was contributing to his stable condition. "Your dedication is remarkable," Dr. Martinez told Camilla during one of her evening rounds. "Many studies have shown that the presence of loved ones can have a measurable positive impact on patient recovery. I believe your being here is helping his healing process." Around midnight, King Charles began showing the first signs of returning consciousness. His eyes fluttered open briefly, and he seemed to focus on Camilla's face above him. Though he was unable to speak due to the oxygen mask and his weakened condition, the recognition in his eyes provided immeasurable comfort to his wife. "I'm here, Charles," Camilla whispered softly. "You're going to be fine. The doctors have taken excellent care of you, and your heart is getting stronger." Dr. Singh, who had remained at the hospital to monitor the king's progress, observed these early signs of consciousness with professional satisfaction. "His neurological responses are excellent," he noted in his medical chart. "The cardiac episode doesn't appear to have caused any secondary complications affecting his brain function." Throughout the night, Detective Inspector Morrison's security team maintained discreet but comprehensive protection around the cardiac unit. They had developed protocols that ensured the king's safety while allowing the medical staff complete access to provide necessary care. The delicate balance between security requirements and medical needs demanded constant coordination and flexibility. As dawn approached, King Charles experienced his first extended period of consciousness since the crisis began. Dr. Martinez carefully removed the oxygen mask to allow him to speak, though she warned that he should keep conversation to a minimum while his body continued to recover from the trauma of the cardiac episode and subsequent intervention. "Camilla," his voice was weak but clear, and the sound of it brought tears of relief to his wife's eyes. "I'm here, darling," she replied, leaning close so he could see her clearly. "You've been very ill, but you're going to be fine now." King Charles attempted to sit up, but Dr. Martinez gently guided him back to the reclined position. "Your Majesty, you need to rest and allow your heart to heal. The procedure was successful, but your body requires time to fully recover from what it's been through." The king's first concern, even in his weakened state, was characteristically focused on others. The reception for the veterans? The Commonwealth calls? I must have caused tremendous disruption. Camilla exchanged glances with Dr. Martinez before responding. "Everything has been handled properly. The only thing that matters now is your recovery. The entire kingdom needs you to get well." Dr. Martinez explained the cardiac catheterization procedure and the placement of the 3 stents that had restored proper blood flow to his heart. She outlined the recovery process and the gradual return to normal activities that would be necessary over the coming weeks and months. "The good news is that your heart muscle appears to have suffered minimal damage," she reported. "With proper medication, lifestyle adjustments, and a gradual return to activities, there's every reason to expect a full recovery." Detective Inspector Morrison received permission to brief the king on the security measures that had been implemented during his medical crisis. "Sir, we've managed to maintain complete confidentiality about your condition. Government officials have been informed as necessary, but there has been no public disclosure or media attention. King Charles nodded weakly, understanding the implications of a royal medical emergency becoming public knowledge. The stability of the monarchy and public confidence in the institution could be significantly affected by news of the sovereign's health crisis. As the morning progressed, the king's condition continued to improve steadily. His vital signs strengthened, and he was able to engage in brief conversations with the medical team about his recovery plan. The sophisticated monitoring equipment that surrounded his bed told an increasingly positive story of cardiac function returning to normal levels. Queen Camilla finally accepted Dr. Martinez's suggestion that she rest briefly in an adjacent family suite while the king slept. The emotional and physical exhaustion of the past 24 hours had taken its toll, and the medical team assured her that his condition was stable enough for her to take a short break. Dr. Martinez used this time to conduct a comprehensive evaluation of the king's cardiac status. The imaging studies showed that all 3 stents were properly positioned and that blood flow to his heart muscle had been completely restored. The dangerous blockages that had threatened his life had been successfully eliminated. His recovery is progressing better than we could have hoped, Dr. Martinez noted in her medical records. The intervention was performed in time to prevent permanent damage to the heart muscle, and his body is responding excellently to treatment. Detective Inspector Morrison coordinated with his superiors to plan for the king's eventual discharge from the hospital and return to royal duties. The security implications of his medical condition would require ongoing assessment, and protocols would need to be modified to account for any lasting effects of his cardiac episode. When Queen Camilla returned to the king's bedside after her brief rest, she found him more alert and oriented than he had been since the crisis began. His color had improved significantly, and the monitors showed strong, steady heart rhythms that indicated his cardiovascular system was functioning normally again. "I've been thinking," King Charles said quietly, his voice stronger than it had been earlier. "Perhaps I have been pushing myself too hard. This experience has reminded me that even kings are mortal." Dr. Martinez, overhearing this conversation, seized the opportunity to discuss lifestyle modifications that would be crucial for his long-term health. "Your Majesty, this cardiac episode was a warning that your body has been under tremendous stress. With proper management, there's no reason you can't continue your royal duties, but some adjustments will be necessary." The afternoon brought encouraging news as additional cardiac testing confirmed that the stent placement had been completely successful. King Charles's heart function was returning to normal levels, and the dangerous symptoms that had precipitated the crisis were completely resolved. As evening approached, Dr. Martinez made the decision to transfer the king from the intensive care unit to a private cardiac recovery suite. This transition represented a significant milestone in his recovery and indicated that the immediate danger to his life had passed. Queen Camilla walked beside the gurney as her husband was moved to his new room, feeling genuinely hopeful for the first time since the terrifying events began.